recording.
Yeah, brother. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Hang
Ladies
on,
and gentlemen.
I have to go poo. God.
Reload
Well,
the bit. Jesus
well,
Christ.
Hey, Jones, I got toilet paper. I'm good to go. I'm good to go. Oh wait, this shit's on, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome. Suplex Biddies, episode 53. Brought to you by our good friends over at Couch Guy Sports. That's me, Chris Jones. You heard Diego's voice. Hunneman is traveling. Kid's a well-renowned traveler now. Going to Ohio. What's the matter with him? We'll get back into that. Hold on, let me put this away before I forget. Suplex Biddies, episode 53, brought to you by our good friends over at Couch Guy Sports. Make sure to go check them out. Check out the blog. Check out the other podcasts on the network. Speaking of the other podcasts on the network, we have a very special guest filling in for Mr. Hunneman tonight. He hosts the Sports and the World podcast on Couch Guy Sports. Also has a writing background for websites like Sportskeeter and others. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our good personal friend, the one, the only, Mr. LaDarius Brown. LaDarius, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing good. Just feel like Diego could have let me know when we press record. 53 episodes in and still never know.
I could have let myself know when I pressed the record button because I still had a dangler. So, stuff happens.
This kid's got his eyes closed halfway through the show.
Listen, all I know is that I felt like Ron Burgundy in that skit that he did for the Comedy Central roast of Justin Bieber, where he also took a huge creamy shit in the back of the studio. I felt like I just did that. So I'm locked and loaded. Let's deliver some content here.
Speaking of things that are locked and loaded, LaDarius might have felt trapped the second the record button played, like Sami Zayn did at WrestleMania this past weekend in that giant.
Oh, what a way to start. Let's go.
All right, before we start, let's just give a brief shout out to our sponsors, our good friends over at Shocked Energy. Drink made by gamers for gamers. Go check them out. Now loaded with a ton of caffeine. ShockedEnergy.com, promo code CGSN for 10% off your order. Also, our good friends over at Exogun, massage you need at a moment's notice. Take it wherever you go. CGS10 for 10% off your order at Exogun.com. And also, finally, now we have a lot of sponsors on this show. If you like sports chats and you want to be able to talk about sports in the chat room, go download the Rave On Sports app, Apple Store, Android Store, Google Play, whatever it's called nowadays. Go download Rave On Sports. Had it for the national championship the other night. Fantastic. It's a good time. But let's dive in. It's the week after WrestleMania, boys. The first WrestleMania that we've seen with that big of a crowd in a very long time. So why don't we dive in? Let's start off with the highs from night one. We'll start off with night one. Night one, what were the highs for you guys from night one?
I'll let LaDarius start here. Be nice to our guests.
Oh, what a scholar and a gentleman. Thank you.
I
Doesn't
promise
happen
you
often.
not
So
neither of those.
yeah, I was gonna say
He's neither of those.
Doesn't happen often, brother. So take advantage.
Yeah. Well, I put it out there in the atmosphere. Definitely the high from night one is look, seeing Stone Cold Steve Austin. That to me, it takes you back. Attitude Era me. It was a super high seeing him there. And even the bit like with Kevin Owens, even the fight he had with Kevin Owens wasn't that bad. And I had I had the bar super low, like Stone Cold out there. He had the knee braces on. He was ready to fight. And I'm like, he took a lot of shots. He took a lot of them, but I think that was definitely one that I really loved. The stunners, like the Vince McMahon stunner, I'm just gonna say Vince.
Night one. Focus on night one. We'll talk about night two. That was after night one.
Okay, teacher. I'll focus. Yes, teacher. Well, okay, definitely for night one, easily. The ladies. I think the ladies definitely the ladies caught me out. I was more specifically, I think the two title matches. I think more so Bianca versus Becky, I believe was night one. I think to me was my match of the night, because with that match, it told a story. You saw the anger, you saw that vitriol that both ladies had, and having Bianca come out on top to me was the absolute right call, because I just think right now Bianca's momentum, and think about this, a second WrestleMania, and think about who she's beaten. She's beaten Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch at a WrestleMania. I think with Bianca, sky's the limit. If people haven't already known that already, even, and I was kind of low on it at first, but I rewatched it. Charlotte versus Ronda. To me, it was a high simply because at the end of the day, once again, storytelling wise, but more so, a bit more specific, the match was a lot better than what I expected it to be. I knew it wasn't going to be no Becky and Bianca. That's a whole nother level. But to me, it was the ladies that kind of took control of that for me for night one.
Now, I agree to disagree with you on the Charlotte Ronda match, solely based on the fact that I feel like they didn't need Ronda to win the Rumble in order to have that match.
Yeah, but see, that's where I say I was iffy on, because I felt you could have had it and not have Ronda win it, but I'm not going to put that on Ronda, because I felt like I'm not going to put that, because it just kind of felt like maybe they just wanted her to main event. I think the only way to main event was she win the Rumble, because I think if she doesn't win the Rumble, that's the old WWE rule. However you want to like it. If you win the Rumble, you got to main event WrestleMania. But I'm not gonna put that on Ronda. You could have easily had this match. Even you could have had Bianca be the main event. Mm-hmm. But I just think that WWE wanted Ronda to have to be in the main event. I think that was the only logic. But I'm not going to fault that on Ronda for that. The match was not terrible. The ending, I kind of split on that. But overall, up to the end of that match, I think it was a good match.
I just think if you're going to have this big persona for Ronda Rousey, the way she lost the match, I think, is where I have the discrepancy. Yeah. So not only did she kind of take a Royal Rumble win away from somebody, but she also loses in a not, what's the word I want to use here? She loses in a way that doesn't not only fit her character, but it makes an embarrassment out of the Royal Rumble winner for this year. So that's why I'm a little bit all over the place with that. But for me, I like Bianca and Becky was great because it was an 8-month story in the making. And this is what WWE does very good and very right, is when they want to get a storyline correct, they come correct. And that's exactly what they did in that 8-month stretch right there. For me, to go on your Stone Cold, seeing Stone Cold being able to take bumps like that was giving me goosebumps and was giving me flashbacks to back in the day when he could actually do it. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping maybe we see Stone Cold one more time. Maybe he comes down to Saudi Arabia. We see him versus somebody. We'll see. But it was good to see him in a match, and especially these part-timers that come in for the match. Such a name like Stone Cold doesn't need to be for the title, and that was a prime example for it right there.
Exactly.
My highlight of the night had to be the debut of Cody Rhodes. I mean, not only does he go from being unwanted to undesirable, 6 years in the making, he gets his AEW theme song that he trademarked. So that's his theme song in WWE as well. I think that was a big stepping stone, not only for him, but I think for AEW as a company, because now I think it solidifies them as real competition to WWE. And I understand Cody going. Cody on Raw, he's going to be the one to compete for the Raw title. I mean, we'll talk about it more when we talk about future storylines later on. But Cody and Seth, we knew it was going to be a great match when it first was rumored. When it finally came out and got to see him come out, it was just the way the place was where I was at. It was an all-time high.
Yeah, and to kind of back on that, to your point, I think that was, to me, hearing Cody's, I
think our friend froze there for a second.
Mr. President, are you there?
I am here, sir.
Okay, why don't you give me your high of night one before?
Sure. In the meantime, as we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, which we're working through, the highlight for me personally, I'm caught between Steve Stone Cold Austin moment, as well as the Cody Rhodes moment. But I also kind of like the fact that Bianca Belair is finally back to the throne that she rightfully deserved to keep all along. Frankly, I haven't been really a big fan of what Becky Lynch has had to offer so far to the product. Hasn't been all that phenomenal, and she's kind of lacked the high potential that she was once in before she left for her pregnancy. And I get it. She just had a kid. She's had time to get back to her routine, return to action, get back into shape and all that stuff. But she's just not the same person she once was. Not even a shade of what she once was. So I kind of felt good to see Bianca Belair come back to her throne, to what she rightfully deserves. And I'm honestly, I loved the Cody Rhodes moment for sure. I absolutely loved it. But I think I loved it more the night after WrestleMania, which was last night, Monday Night Raw. I think his moment yesterday, the way that the crowd embraced him and all that stuff, was far better than what we saw at WrestleMania. I think the crowd popped, the reactions, the emotions going through the air, him going on and talking about his dad and the background that made him kind of decide as to whether or not he wanted to come back to WWE, which he pointed out it was the easiest decision he's ever made so far when it comes to a contract. And he went on about talking about, how his dad was the American legacy at one point. Now he just wants to, continue with this tendency of the American nightmare, and as to why he wanted to continue with that legacy. So frankly, I out of night one, I think there was for me personally, I was a little bit disappointed. If it wasn't for the Stone Cold moment, as well as the Cody Rhodes moment, I think night one would have actually been a dud, if anything. I don't think that the matches really had much to offer. The storylines really didn't have much to offer, including the Mysterios versus Miz and Paul, which frankly I expected so much out of that match. And for me personally, it underperformed in so many categories. Paul is one of those guys that you expect for him to be highly entertaining. And the Miz considers himself as like the best one in Hollywood. And as to why he's the A-lister, he sucked as being the A-lister in WrestleMania night one. He absolutely under-delivered. And the Mysterios, wasn't really expecting much out of them, considering that the A-lister and the protagonist of Hollywood that should be carrying out the match and delivering a lot more than what Mysterios should be expected to be delivering. So, my opinion, didn't really care much for night one. I'm excited about the seeing Stone Cold. I thought he was great. It did feel like when Ben Affleck took over the Batman role for that period of time, he was smooth. He was super slow at moving, but he still has it. He delivered great content to the ring, and that's all that mattered, really, for entertainment purposes.
So for me, Logan Paul and The Miz, you didn't expect much for it, but I think Logan Paul did a pretty good job in the limited time that he had to prepare for it. And I think that there's potential for him to have a little bit of a run in WWE. One storyline that we have to talk about that's very underrated and underappreciated at the moment, it's just how good Drew McIntyre is. Drew McIntyre is the first person to kick out of the End of Days finisher, which is a long time coming. And it's taken a long time for Baron Corbin, for someone to do that against Baron Corbin. So that's another thing we have to talk about as well. The lows, for me, it's just the Ronda Charlotte one. I had hopes for it, but it's super underdelivered. I just think the finish kind of made it that much more worthless. And we talked about it earlier, the waste of the Royal Rumble win right there, in my opinion.
You know what's another highly disappointing thing that we haven't really talked much about? Charlotte Flair versus Ronda Rousey. I am so sick and tired of Charlotte Flair continuing to be I'm the top edge in the category. Like, I am so sick and tired of that storyline. It is so overdone that at this point, like, if it wasn't for people like Bianca Belair, Liv Morgan, and the tag teams that are being developed, I would have zero interest in the women's division. Zero, because of Charlotte Flair. She's absolutely taken the air out of that whole entire division at this point. LaDarius, I see you over there. I know you got some thoughts. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I think we kind of alluded to this earlier. Going back to Charlotte and Ronda, and like, to be clear, do I think Ronda did not have to win the Rumble? That part I agree. If we're going to get that, I think the only reason why it was done was to justify putting that match in a main event. Outside of that, because, like, look, if I had to talk about Charlotte Flair, listen, if I had to rank the 4 horsewomen, listen, Charlotte's 4 out of 4. Like, let's be clear, I'm not a huge Charlotte Flair fan, but with that being said, I think this particular match, the match was not terrible. I just think it didn't have to be the main event. It didn't have to be the main event, but Ronda winning the Royal Rumble, you had to have this match in the main event, because if you win the Royal Rumble, you're guaranteed to main event WrestleMania. But could you have given that to someone else? Absolutely. We can go ad nauseum on who else could have won the Rumble, but I'm not going to blame Ronda Rousey for the place, because I didn't like the ending. Like, that, to me, it irked me to see that. If you're going to have Ronda lose, okay, fine, because I know it's Charlotte Flair. I get it. But to have her lose in that fashion, and no matter how many times I see it, it irks me, because I'm like, you brought Ronda Rousey back for that. Mm-hmm. Like,
that's
you brought
exactly
her back.
Why.
You brought her back for that, when you could have had this match. You could have had Bianca Belair, let's just say, win the Rumble. Then you justify having that match as the main event. And then I just think the biggest knock on the Charlotte Ronda fight is just that the placement of the match. Like, for the match itself, it was great up until the end, because that, to me, it's aggravating. Because, like, look, I'm not the biggest Charlotte Flair fan in the world. I've made it known. But to me, it was just the placement of that match made it not that high, I think, on people's list. I don't think the match, if you put that match maybe, somewhere in the middle of WrestleMania, I think people have been okay with that. But to have that be the closing image of night one, I think it left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the Bianca Becky angle was going on for quite some time, but they're gonna set it up for next WrestleMania. This is how it's gonna go already. I can tell you right now. But it's gonna be Becky versus Ronda. And for me, that storyline takes a hit, because not only did they both lose in WrestleMania this year, but they have to now feel like they have to work harder and dominate the entire year to get that one-on-one Mania match that could main event a night. But Ronda needs to get back into the swing of things in order for that to happen. But that's enough for night one. Let's move into night two. Let's talk about the highs from night two.
Oh, there were so many. Night two is really what made WrestleMania, in my opinion. I mean, you go from the McAfee match to as far as AJ Styles taking on Edge, which I think was on night two, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. AJ Styles on Edge. The men's tag team championship was up in the air. That was a phenomenal match. I mean, for me, there were so many great matches, but I think my highlight for night two is a tie between the Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns match, as well as the phenomenal comedy act that Johnny Knoxville and company delivered on Sami Zayn.
I don't care what you say about Sami Zayn. That man deserves a world title push after what he just encountered in WrestleMania, because he's the only guy that I could think of that could do this angle for so long with a guy like Johnny Knoxville and make Johnny Knoxville look good. Well, Darius, what do you think? What was the highlight for you tonight, too?
The highlight, I think to me, I have two highs. I think the women's tag team match, I think was incredible because to me, it was amazing to me. And I'll just throw this in here. Like, if you're going to have a women's tag team division, I think you have to, these teams, were makeshift, but I think given that, I think seeing Sasha and Naomi come out on top, those belts needed credibility. Let's just be super clear. I'm not knocking, Queen Zelina or Carmella, but like at some point, I think the steam ran out of that engine, well before, kind of early on in their title reign. So it wasn't a matter of if they were going to lose the belt. It was a matter of who they were going to lose the belt to me at WrestleMania. That to me was a high. Another one, Edge and AJ Styles, seeing that Edge, Edge has had a lot of character movements, but to see the way Edge came to the ring at WrestleMania, my guy came up and sat on a chair. He was on a throne. And I'm like, props to WWE for doing that. But the match overall was great, but the end of that match was interesting because seeing Damian Priest, who I really like, and kind of seeing there could be a little something there, we'll probably talk about, later, but I really enjoyed that. And, as far as Roman and Brock, I liked it, but the hype didn't equal to me, it was a great match between two phenomenal beasts. Mm-hmm. But, to say this is the greatest, I'm like, okay, let's pump the brakes on. Let's pump all.
Oh, no, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
But I think it solidified Roman Reigns as being the guy. And you still had people who doubted that fact. It's where I've been telling people, once Roman learned how to get on the mic, this guy's going to be a champion. Because early on, he wasn't that great on the mic. He had the skill set in the ring. Like, nobody doubted that. But my question mark was, if this man can knock it out of the park on the mic, I don't think there's nobody in the company that could beat him. And if you think about it, who's left? And then we'll get to, once again, foreshadowing. But all in all, night 2, I would say, was slightly better than night 1.
Oh, for sure. To me, the Roman Brock match, as much as it was underwhelming, we also have to put into account that it did look like Roman
was hurt,
was injured, so they adjusted on the fly. Because if you noticed, night 2 ended 15 to 20 minutes earlier than night 1 did. Mm-hmm. So fill that 10-minute gap right there. So they finished at 12 minutes. They probably go another 10. And just more punishment. The only thing I liked about the match is the fact that the Usos didn't get involved.
Yeah.
The Usos didn't get involved, and that was something that Roman desperately needed. Now, did Paul Heyman get involved briefly? People didn't see it because of the camera angle, little poke of the rope. Yeah. But, I mean, I think you guys hit the nails on the head for the highs. Edge and AJ was great. That little faction that Edge is going to create with the rumored people that they want to be in it could be very, very good. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. I think the low for me, I mean, let's be honest. They did the New Day dirty. Sheamus and Ridge, less than 2 minutes to give him on the card.
Yeah.
Like, come on. That's a little bit of a slap in the face, in my opinion. I think they did the New Day dirty. And then I think they did, realistically, Bobby and Almost just, that match to me, right off the bat, they wanted to push Almost to the moon. Can't do it anymore because he lost Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania. So the match just made no sense to me. And now last night on Raw, I was recording on Tuesday night, we had MVP hit Bobby Lashley from behind, and now he sides with Omos. It's the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
But no, night 2 is definitely a little bit better than night 1, but you can't take things away from night 1 as well. But that does it for Mania's highs and lows. Let's foreshadow. WrestleMania Backlash is coming up sooner than we know it. What do we think? Give me some rivalries. What do we think that we could see? Like, first question I'll ask: do we see Roman doing double duty?
Yes.
Or does Roman drop a belt and then they kind of have the vacant title on the line at WrestleMania Backlash?
I have a storyline for that already, but I let somebody else go ahead.
I'm more intrigued to hear about the storyline. I guess I'll jump in. I guess one particular storyline, post WrestleMania that I really like, and I love the women's division, so I'll stick to that side. And seeing the rematch, seeing Sasha and Naomi defend against Rhea and Liv. Now, I expected Sasha and Naomi to win. That, to me, that the whole championship contenders thing, to have your champions in there, doesn't make sense to me. But that's a whole nother conversation. But I think the ending of that match, where you saw Liv in the ring, after taking the loss, and Rhea just kind of just shrugging her off. And I said to myself, they're going to do something with Rhea now. And then if you see the photos, or you saw like an ominous purple light. I don't know if you guys saw it or not.
I did, yep.
And then it kind of took me back to the end of, and that's why I alluded to the end of the Edge and AJ Styles match. Because I said, well, wait a minute. That kind of purple looked familiar. I do believe that, Rhea Ripley in a faction with Edge and Damian Priest, that's pretty good. That to me is a storyline for me, because now you give Rhea Ripley, who's been a champion, Damian Priest has been in. So it's not like the faction is not coming in with credibility. I'm not saying there's no evolution, but they're coming in with credibility. And you have Edge leading the group. I'm just going to be curious to see who else they're going to add, because
I'll give you one name, maybe two, depending on the call-up situation. But it's an NXT guy. It's either going to be Braun Breaker or Tommaso Ciampa.
When you say that, I lean toward Ciampa.
Right, correct.
I lean Ciampa. When you brought up Ciampa and it kind of hit the cortex hit, I think that would be a very nice faction. I think that's just one storyline that I have. And another interesting one would be, where do they go with Bianca Belair?
They go with one of two. They go with either Bianca Bailey or Bianca Asuka, whichever one they want out of the women that are coming back.
Yeah. And to me, once again, I have no notes, but I assume you saw my notes virtually. Invisible notes. And lean toward Bailey, because I just feel like a returning Bailey, and you already have something there with Bailey and Bianca already there.
Mm-hmm.
I do expect both Asuka and Bailey to come back at some point, but having Bailey come back and face Bianca, you've got the juice there. Bailey wants to get back. I love that storyline. Maybe down the road, I would also kind of like to see Queen Zelina get a shot. I don't know if she will. I don't know. But, there's other women there. But to your point, it has to be somebody who's coming back, a big name coming back, to kind of give Bianca that push. But like somewhere down the road, I would like to see like a Queen Zelina, even a Doudrop, who I think doesn't get enough credit. There's, something that has a connection with Bianca, I think, but I lean toward Bailey on a return at some point as well.
All right, Diego, I'm curious to see what your thing that you were talking about. LaDarius and I have talked long enough. I want to hear it. Hit me with
it. So we
want answers.
So first up, I got a small storyline that I think can evolve afterwards, and that is the potential split of two very good tag teams going on right now in the women's division. Wouldn't happen immediately, but it could be something that happens probably past SummerSlam. And that is the
future. Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking the potential breakup of the Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan tag team split, so that there could be a storyline finally developed with Liv Morgan, so she can get a little bit of a push, which she rightfully deserves. She's at her best potential so far that she's displayed since joining WWE. But I also see Sasha Banks turning heel on Naomi. And with that in mind, I would love to see a storyline between the two heel turners, which would be Rhea Ripley versus Sasha Banks. That storyline to me is intriguing. It's two very competitive people with a lot of talent to offer. Very juicy storyline that could develop here. And frankly, I think this would do wonders to the women's division to continue, because again, as much as I love Ronda Rousey to have come back to WWE, I don't think she's ready. Much like LaDarius had mentioned, kind of like you both mentioned, it's kind of an opportunity for both Becky Lynch and
Mind out of the gutter.
Yeah, right. For Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey to kind of recharge batteries and get back to maybe a potential similarity to the storyline that they had, or maybe something even better. But at this point right now, I would love to see Rhea Ripley versus Sasha Banks. The storyline that I'm most interested about that could potentially happen is the fact that now with Roman Reigns having 2 belts to his name, that opens him up for double duty. And with double duty potentially being in the cards, I think come the next biggest event, which would be SummerSlam, is a triple threat match between Roman Reigns, AJ Styles, and Cody Rhodes, which I will love that for all sake and passion of WWE. I think with Cody Rhodes now having that, I don't think he liked my take.
He just kind of abruptly left.
Yeah, he just left. That's fine. It happens. A lot of women have done that in my life. Wow, I'm so thrown off. I don't even know what to say.
That's excellent. Well, see,
but I'm just saying, like, I would love that storyline because, frankly, I think WWE deserves it. It would, number one, give the babyface run that we want to see out of AJ Styles, especially now that he displayed that bulldog character that he's known for and that he brought out against his match with Edge. Edge wanted to see the bulldog AJ Styles, and he got the bulldog AJ Styles, which was phenomenal. If there's anybody that can bring the best out of any competitor out there, is Edge. We've seen it with his matchup against Randy Orton. Now we saw it against AJ Styles. So I'm kind of glad that that match happened between those two. With Cody Rhodes now being part of WWE, I think he deserves a storyline potential there. And with Roman Reigns now having the 2 belts, why the hell not? Mm-hmm. And the last one, but not least, before I hear your comments on that line, is I agree that we could see a call-up out of NXT. I think at this point it's been kind of clear and obvious that Tommaso Ciampa would be the one to be called up. Should that be the case, I wouldn't be surprised if we see kind of a storyline to kind of honor Triple H in a way. And Ciampa could very well go up to the Raw brand of WWE, and we see a storyline between Seth Rollins and Ciampa, which I think that would be a phenomenal storyline that we all would want to see. They both have a lot to offer. They're great on the mic, great performers, great entertainers. Why the hell not? Those are the 3 storylines that I can see develop.
So for me, I think one thing to go back, I'll even do you one better here. I think
Oh, Jones one up in me? No, never.
What else is new? Well, I thought about this before you said this, but Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley. That split's happening like next week.
I would think
Rhea's
so.
Gonna
Yeah.
turn, Rhea's gonna. This is what's gonna happen. Rhea's gonna turn on her. Then it's gonna set up Rhea versus Liv for WrestleMania Backlash. Liv wins, and then we get the year of Liv. Liv wins the Rumble. Ready for this? Bold take. I'm calling my shot now. Episode 53 of Suplex Biddies. I'm going to say it's going to be the SmackDown Women's title because Liv's going to find a way on SmackDown later this year. But she's going to win the Rumble, and she's going to be in a triple threat match for the SmackDown Women's title with Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks.
Oh, I would love that.
That's going to be one of the title matches next year at WrestleMania. I'm calling my shot now with that.
I wouldn't be opposed to that, and I would agree with you 100% on that.
The Edge faction is going to be nice to see what direction it goes with, but LaDarius is back after Diego's hot take. He clearly didn't like it because he left and then got the message that it was over and jumped right back in.
Yep. Well, you know, I figure you kind of left me like all the women in my past, so I kind of just said, all right, well, another one bites the dust.
Yeah. So LaDarius, I was basically just kind of going over how I think the Liv Rhea angle ends like the tag team ends next week after the title match, sets up them for WrestleMania Backlash. Liv wins. Then we get the year of Liv. Liv wins the Rumble. And then she fights at WrestleMania 39 against Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks in the triple threat match. Give her the Rey Mysterio-esque, Chris Benoit-esque. I know we don't say that name, but that kind of push towards WrestleMania 39 is what I think for Liv Morgan, hopefully.
Yeah. My last storyline that I had mentioned was Seth Rollins versus Tommaso Ciampa. I believe Ciampa is the one that got called up.
And one other storyline I think we're gonna see Roman versus Drew for the Universal title. That's without a doubt happening in WrestleMania Backlash for sure. The Raw angle of it, I wouldn't be surprised if they do a triple threat with Roman, Seth, and Cody off that. But again, I also wouldn't be surprised if they vacate the title and do like a fatal four-way and have it be AJ, Cody, Edge, and Seth Rollins, which would be unreal. So,
dude, just say that you agree with my triple threat match, and that's it. Like you kind of mentioned the names that I mentioned for my triple threat, but you just went around it in a circle. I mentioned that Roman Reigns versus AJ Styles and Cody Rhodes should be a triple threat match for potentially either Backlash or SummerSlam.
I don't know. I'll have to double check again, but that's any final thoughts for episode 53? We wrap it up and put it in the books. No, LaDarius, thank you for coming on tonight. Why don't you drop? Thank you
for leaving me as well. Appreciate it.
why don't you drop where people can find you on Twitter, where we can find your podcast, where we can find your writing work?
Sure. You can find me on the Twitter at LaDarius_Brown. You can find my writings at, here at Couch Guy Sport. You can find it at Sports Kita. I write for Belly Up Sports. I write for Beyond Women's Sports. You can find my writing. You can find also my podcast also as well on the Couch Guy Sports Network as well.
Fantastic. Jones, why don't you plug in your socials? Plug in your socials for one time.
Plug in my socials. All right. Well, make sure first and foremost, why don't you follow the Suplex Biddies podcast on Twitter at Suplex Biddies. You can find your boy at CJonesu1212, currently writing for Belly Up Sports and Couch Guy Sports as well. There's other podcasts on the network.
Yes, sir. And you can find me at Diego_the DJ on Twitter. You can also find my content on Belly Up Sports, Pride of London, which is a fan-sided flagship for Chelsea Football Club, the one and only network, Couch Guy Sports. And you can also find me and Jones on the Yellow Card podcast for Couch Guy Sports as well. It's been real. It's been fun. Episode 53 wraps up here. Jones, take us out.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen. Next week, episode 54, the wrestling game could be back as long as Hunneman is back in the States, that well-renowned traveling son of a. You were supposed to. That's where you end it right there before I.
Oh, that's where I end it.
Yeah, come on.
Okay.
Let's try this again. Episode 53 in the books. hopefully next week for episode 54, Hunneman will be back. You do the wrestling game. That son of a